All right, welcome to episode number 4 of Geek Speak. We have the esteemed Alex back with us. Alex, how has your week been?
It's been very good. I hope everybody had a fantastic Independence Day if you celebrate. And it was great. We got to hang out and saw some fireworks and just kind of got to relax a little bit. We're getting geared up to go to the Renaissance Fair tomorrow, which is going to be very, very fun.
Ooh,
So very
Ren
excited.
Fairs.
So a lot of fun things happening. But otherwise, we just got great news for Flesh and Blood, and I don't know. I love seeing all the updates. Anytime there's a new thing happening in Flesh and Blood, I'm just like rushing to my computer. I'm like, we gotta talk about
Yeah, there's definitely a bajillion things always happening, but at least we're not, having to drink from a fire hose like the perpetual Magic the Gathering release schedule. That
it. Mm-hmm.
I will not say too much bad about that, but like at a certain point, I do want to digest the things versus like someone like cranking open my mouth with like a medieval torture device and just shoving cards down my mouth. Be like, take this, you want this now? It's like, what?
Right.
I haven't even got to digest this last set. Oh gosh, so.
There's a lot. It's a lot happening over there. It's like I've gotten to the point where I'm like, if I really want to actually dive deep into a set, it's just like choose one set every 6 months and hope that it's in my lane.
Yeah, apparently tonight is Assassin's Creed, the release set for Magic.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an interesting IP crossover. I don't know how that's going to work into their canon and lore, but yeah, that's going to be something intriguing because
Mm-hmm.
that was one topic I did want to talk about tonight. Is a little bit into the lore of Flesh and Blood with us,
All right.
because I am pretty passionate about that. I know there's a couple of YouTubers that are out there that cover some of that, pretty in depth. But even though there's been a little bit of a lull in the lore, I feel like there's still a lot to consume currently.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully with these next couple of sets, that kind of gap will be filled again with whatever writers they do bring on board. So,
Mm-hmm.
have you any insight into maybe some lore for either the latest release of Bolton, as an example, which is one of the other topics that we might talk about today, and or maybe Rosetta in general?
Yeah, as far as things are concerned, it sounds like they're really gearing up for a pretty big like lore bomb. I didn't dive deeper into the Arya storyline very very much. It's definitely on my homework to do exactly that. Bolton, we know a little bit about Bolton from just his small little stories, but Dust Till Dawn, we didn't do anything special, really special directly with Bolton outside of him being like, "We're going to war," and everybody's like, "You got it, Bolton. We got you. We'll go to war."
Got it.
And but I think with Rosetta's going to be very interesting because we're putting a big focus on Rosetta, right? Like Candlehold itself and the entire concept behind the tree or the Millennium Tree and the Queen and all these other concepts that you can't really just kind of like bring up these big characters and not expect more lore. I don't know whether or not we're going to get like a comic of Rosetta, right? But I would say that over time, especially after with kind of like the miss of lore from heavy hitters, we're getting a little bit from Mysteria, but it's still most of Mysteria is a mystery to us. And I think that with Rosetta, over time, as they get new writers and they kind of try to put a little bit more detail into that, we'll see better and better, longer articles in regards to their lore and their backgrounds and what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I think it's going to be exciting. I like reading about the lore about each of these heroes. It helps me connect with them if I am playing them in any of these events, and it's a good time. I love the lore, but I definitely would hope that they're starting to get their team on making sure that something is a little bit more concise.
Yeah, I like the storytelling component, and when you search for things using that tool, legendarystories.net, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is a fantastic open source project that kind of scrapes all that lore and puts it into a
Mm-hmm.
much more digestible, searchable format. if I look for things like Rosetta, Rosetta, I think is how it's spelled.
Yep.
There are 12 mentions of that. So Briar's in there, a little bit of text from some other areas. There's part of it in an FAQ, but there really isn't much to go off of in regards to, I guess, the artwork from the new Rosetta set, which kind of leads into some of the stuff that, like, this tree, right, the Millennium Tree that's talked about on
Right.
the card. What exactly is that? Because I, again, was under the impression that in Aria there was just the one tree that we saw basically on the Fabled that came out of that set. So I didn't know there was more than one tree, or maybe there's more than one way to name that tree. Obviously, there's more than one tree in the world. I'm not being a smartass here. Like, no pun intended. Like,
I was like, don't give me the ammo, man. Don't give me the ammo. I won't have to say it. So, I think
someone would have.
Yeah, right. Somebody in the comment section, we know what you're talking about. But I think even, there's probably obviously several big things, but I know the one thing I know about the Millennium Tree specifically is what I had learned. I think it was over on, shout out to Dead Summer.
That's one of the ones that does a lot of the lore, actually. So.
They're doing a fantastic job over there, just deep diving into these shorts that have a whole lot of lore aspects to them. And I think it was on one of their shorts. I could be wrong, or maybe James White talked about it, or Brian Gottlieb talked about it, but like the Millennium Tree is essentially what the base of Candlehold is on top of. Like the Millennium Tree once existed, but then was destroyed, and Candlehold is actually in the stump of that tree, if I recall correctly.
Well, something interesting is when you search for the word tree. By the way, I poured a little bit of this Macallan out. This stuff is pretty flavorful for what it is.
Yeah, sure is.
But anyways, there's 30 results. One of them is called the Stoneberry Tree, which is from the Botanical Compendium. But then looking at some of these other ones, I don't see much in regards to any mention of actually really anything for the I mean, Corsham's in there. Corsham is a tree, but like the word tree doesn't really give any meaningful.
Exactly.
I mean, it just says the Great Tree of Corsham. So if there's that tree, is Aria really divided into maybe the 3 or 4 subsets that we have? Like each of the elements have its own tree. So Corsham is the tree of, I don't know, what would that one have been? Because there are the Eisenloft or what is that called?
Eisenloft and Volthaven.
Yeah, so there's multiple. It's the pulses. It's all 3 of the pulses. I feel like those are important in some regard.
Yeah, I feel like those are the 3. Those are just the general 3 cities of Aria, and Corsham is the they call it Corsham's a crossroad of the elements, right?
Yeah,
so.
Candlehold, Eisenloft, Volthaven, and because they're all legendary, you can only have one apiece.
Right.
Maybe if I type tree in Fabry, I'm going to see what it shows up. Absolutely jack. Nothing. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, you learn a little bit. I mean, there's just more that comes in. Like Pulse of Candlehold has that. If you look at the art for Pulse of Candlehold, there is that the city of Candlehold, or the province of Candlehold, and that is on top of a stump, and that stump is supposed to be the Millennium Tree. That is the concept behind it, is that was once the Millennium Tree, and now was cut.
As in that line in this photo I'm showing is the stump, and the basically city is built on top of that stump.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, well, I guess like the castle is built on the stump, and then you see there's all that surrounding area. That's like a town, right?
Now this is intriguing. It does say Rosetta's Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
Inside of that particular flavor text on this one, which I say I am missing flavor text. Please, James White, LSS, everybody, I want flavor text on every card. I know it's not possible, but like, give me more flavor text. I just love flavor text.
Flavor text is good. It's funny, that was actually something that was brought up. I had the pleasure. I don't remember if I said this in several episodes, but I had the pleasure of while I was streaming one day, I had somebody who was on the creative team for Flesh and Blood's lore come into my stream, and
Oh, awesome.
we had a very slight conversation, nothing spoilery or anything, but I genuinely was just like, you know, we were talking about how there was like kind of a lack of like big lore articles for the heavy hitters heroes, and they're like, yeah, you know, we definitely, you know, weren't able to hit the mark for that, but there is quite a lot of like kind of you know, unanswered flavor text in heavy hitters that is just like everywhere. Like so many cards in heavy hitters have so much flavor text that's like, who are these characters? Who is this person? Why are these people here? Like,
and that gets back to this. So I think there's one of them in here. It's Heroes of Wraith, right? These are the heroes, but then there's other characters, right? So in the other characters, there are their names, and somewhere I swear, is it Minerva? If I type Minerva, Minerva, maybe. There was like a interesting on this site at one point. There was like a chart, and I do not recall where that chart is at, but it had. I don't know. I'll have to see if I can find it at some point. Others, others. Here it is. Yorick, Taipanis, Taylor. I think he's changed this a little bit, but there was a section where you could look at like the flavor text or the characters that were mentioned that were just there, but you don't know why they were mentioned yet, or they haven't come into meaning. Maybe it's under data. Oh, here it is. Like, data animal like data characters. Here it is. I found it. Yeah. Sorry,
there you
took
go.
me a minute. So like this is the comprehensive in air quotes because I don't know when the last time this was updated, but like all of these characters, right? Zane Runescribe, Yoji. Well, we kind of have a Yoji, right? Because he came from the Emperor. Yorick.
Yep.
You know, Victor Goldmane, Vera. So some of these characters, they're mentioned, but like Rigu. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. I want the Rigu. I want the robot. Give me the little mechy little robot thing. I want because if I remember right in the Dynamic Man, Rigu, there's a photo of it. Yeah, this thing right there. I think that's considered Rigu, right? So
yep, that's him.
The endless number of heroes that you could have, I feel, is just like, you know, chef's kiss, right? Like this is literally an open narrative book that you can just pull various pieces of lore as you see fit. You know, Maxwell, right, as an example, we don't technically have a Maxwell character that I'm aware of, but Maxwell has been mentioned, and I don't know if it's kind of like, in a weird way, if you think about like Borderlands, you know, you have all those weapon manufacturers that are in there that most people would be more familiar with. In Borderlands, they have like, you know, this particular name of a firearm or whatever, or this particular name of a manufacturer, and I feel like in the mech world, maybe there are those kind of style of things, and maybe you could have unique things or bolt-ons, add-ons, things like that. I don't know. Again, I'm looking at all the reason that came into my mind is somebody on Reddit earlier came up with a prototype character that's so I think somebody had mentioned like the new wizard may or may not have feet is the theory, right? Because the idea with Rosetta is maybe that particular hero may do this funny thing where like no feet, right? Because it's floating in the air. Well, then somebody had released this funny, you know, photo of like a brute that has you have 4 weapon slots. Like how cool would that be? But your intellect was like 2 or something. Obviously the balancing act would be complicated, but I get where the idea is, right? You have all these levers and things you can fine tune and play with, right? Because each, you know, elemental means that Florian can run elemental cards. Runeblade means he can run Runeblade cards. But you could also go further, and then that's where specializations come in, or you know, specifically maybe tailor things further down. So there's just so much. The surface hasn't been scratched on some of these things, I don't think.
Yeah, a lot of it is definitely not, you know, we don't have like a definitive like this is definitely going to be just like a character. I mean, like think about Amira. I can't remember what her name is. I think it's Amira. Goodness,
Amira.
Yeah, Amira. Yep, Amira. She is. Everybody thought that Enigma was going to be Amira in Part of the Mistveil because she is on like several different new illusionist cards that were just released, and she's in a whole bunch of the ones from Everfest, and she looks like she's got the same hair as a bunch of other illusionist cards, and she's very much so like, you know, we thought we saw her in the key art, which turns out like the key art, which is supposed to be Deep Blue Sea, is not actually the card Deep Blue Sea. Deep Blue Sea has a different art or a different person in the water than who we see in the key art. So there's a whole lot of stuff that you can just be like, oh yeah, that doesn't really, like, all this stuff is just different, doesn't really track as well. And I think it's there's a lot of like just general, I don't know, like guesstimate work when it comes to this, but it's nice to see the community just kind of like coming together and be like, hey, any single time I see any kind of flavor text, it's getting put in this article, and we're going to go ahead and we're just going to keep it here. And if it references anything else, then we need to talk about it. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's definitely some of the, you know, with the lore specific. I was trying to see if I can find that forearm photo. It was cute. I don't even know. I probably won't be able to find it very quickly. That's the problem with doing things real time, is like, you know, I knew I was going to say it, and I'm like, oh, I should probably save that, and I didn't. And I'm like, that stinks. Shouldn't have let that one go. Man, some of these altars, though, holy moly. Let me see if I can pop this one open here. Like, I'm getting a kick out of, like, you know, some of these altars that people are doing is just fantastic, right? And there's so many good altar artists out there, too.
That's another thing, too. We, you know, we take a look at, if you take a look at Findall's Spring Tunic, and then you take a look at, like, Verdance from Rosetta. That's funny.
4 weapon zones.
That's so funny.
And then it has 2 intellect. Look at that.
Yeah, 2 intellect, 40 health. Just do like the weirdest stuff.
I don't know. It was cute. It was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it's entirely the concept, right? Like, I definitely think that sky is the limit when you have such a very unique, a unique way to play the game. Is that you could get multiple weapon zones. Doesn't seem like an impossible thing to do, or anything like that. But I mean, specifically, you know, back talking about like the lore and stuff, like looking at Findall's Spring Tunic, you had, you know, people take a look at that, and then they took a look at Verdance, who was the new wizard coming out in Rosetta. Like, my goodness, it looks almost exactly like Findall, but like, who the hell is Findall? Like, who is this person? And why are their clothes so powerful? And it's just kind of one of these situations where there's a lot of stuff that was deep dived into, just like flavor text, kind of like searching for it and finding little hints here and there in different articles. But from what I hear, which I would certainly hope so, is that kind of instead of elaborating through like articles or like small little things, and just kind of like pasting them every now and again, I would imagine LSS is probably looking to do another lore book. And
I hope so.
Actually, they're actually going to put, like, it's going to be like a big honking book, like a big book. So
I'm so very sad I still don't have an original lore book. I had an opportunity to get one that was damaged, and I really, at the time, I thought I could jump on it. Just some weird crap happened right about that time, and we had some financial weirdness happen. So I was like, you know, promising I'd get it. Then something ended up happening. I couldn't get it right then, and then it got sold. So I still want one, because I have I printed one out. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I used it on the Fab Lore podcast. Oh, it's right here. Ghetto is an understatement.
I like the fact you can print them out, though. That's
This is my lore book. It is to hell and back, highlighted, and you know, as should be, right? You try to understand all the nuances. I haven't got that deep in because we kind of paused that Fab Lore piece where we were doing deep dives on the lore for different things, but you know, looking at all the different stuff like this, I want to pick this back up, and maybe that would be another fun thing we can try and dive into, because I don't know if Riddler Man is still wanting to do that. I know he's been pretty busy as of late, and I've been wanting to kind of jump back in it, but maybe if he's not interested in that too much more, or if he's kind of busy, maybe we can do the spiritual successor to that, or maybe link that into this, because I do really want to dive more into the lore speculation, relationship of characters, how those things fall,
Mm-hmm.
different classes. Like, I'm still enamored by the fact that I can't stop this in the right spot. There we go. uh, the classes, right? We still haven't seen Alchemist. We still haven't seen. Technically, we have seen Bard. We have not seen Cleric. We haven't seen Necromancer. So, at some point we're going back to Solana, and maybe that's when, and it would be kind of silly to maybe introduce all of them at once, but maybe we get one or two in addition to like the Illusionist, or I don't know. I'm hoping that there is a Necromancer Cleric combo set, or like a 2-player starter, because I feel like that's gonna pop off a whole new era of excitement, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of players are waiting for Necromancer to happen, but I think you also, as a realist, I also have to understand that, one, this isn't exactly like a promise to the people that these classes will ever be made.
That
it
is
could
true.
have been in the works when they strictly first started. Also, if looking at that exact same thing, mechanologist is not a class on there, but they do have mechanologist. So it is a concept. I don't want to crush anybody's dreams, but because I also want Necromancer, but I think it is just one of those things where you have to look at a lot of these classes from a gameplay and game design perspective, and you have to go, how in the world would I possibly be able to do that? And I would believe the closest thing to a Necromancer would be an illusionist, right? Would be an
with
illusionist
the summoning
that just
things and having them. Yeah, I don't know, kind of like maybe if you had something in your, not a creature, because there's no creature in the graveyard, but like, banish a blue from your graveyard, or a red, and pay 1, create a 2/2 skeleton warrior token that does something that also has maybe Arcane Barrier 1, which would be kind of again some way to protect against like a wizard trying to go or whatever. I don't know, something crazy like that.
You could even, you could utilize it even so much to the case of like even like if Shadow Illusionist ever became a thing, like Shadow Illusionist has the opportunity to do something like that, because that's not, we have the Shadow talent is pretty concrete in what it's supposed to do, and utilizing its banish zone for you to be able to effectively utilize your cards, and then of course Illusionist being one to kind of get allies or get like kind of that creature board state and make that happen. It's pretty well designed to the point where you can go, yeah, I guess we can just figure out how to alternatively summon these creatures, but maybe they have to like self-mill into the graveyard first, and then you have to get them going, or self-banish into the graveyard, like with Soul Shackles, or self-banish into the banish zone, I should say, like Soul Shackles, and make that happen. But
sure. Well, I've been looking at this Flesh and Blood beta for their card database, similar to like FabDB, rest in peace, or I guess that project is kind of wrapped up according to what I've read. So he's
it is open source now, though.
It is, which is actually kind of cool. I kind of want to look at the source code myself and just kind of like maybe find a cool way to integrate that into something like a phone app or whatever. But you can go to a web page pretty easy too. So Flesh and Blood released their own beta, and one of the reasons I was coming here is kind of leans into the next topic, is the Bolton deck. So it's nice that they have this here, right? So if I click on this, this is their version of that, and then if I go to February, we can do the same kind of concept. This is their version of how the cards are. Now, the one thing that's interesting about this Bolton deck, that again, I'm not really a serious Bolton player. I know that there are others that are out there that are more hardcore with Bolton than myself, but the one card in here, because there are some reprints, there are new cards, but there is one card being reprinted in here above all else that I am very interested for the inclusion reason, but I'm also surprised that it's in this deck. Do you know what card I'm referring to?
Snatch?
That actually is second on my list of cards I'm curious how it got reprinted.
Oh, Sink Below?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, do you know what's intriguing about Sink Below?
That it's a necessary defense reaction for most any deck these days.
It is, but it's only ever been in Welcome to Wraith. They had I'm not ignoring the extremely hard to get, let's call judge packs.
Yeah, those are cold foil though, so you don't want that.
Yeah, you could get it in the Dromai Blitz deck, which is unbelievably crazy expensive. I was looking at this earlier. It's $9 on TCG Player. I have no idea why you would pay $9 for a Dromai specific Sync Blow when it's the same card as the other one. But that is going.
It's got a little stamp on it.
It has the defense reaction stamp.
I have it. It's got the D-React stamp. It was my first Blitz deck I ever bought.
Like that symbol right there.
Yep.
But that's $9. And then the History Pack 1, God love whiteboarder. So
yep.
That's one of the things I will show off later is I actually was very impressed with myself because I think I've done something that I can probably say very few people have done because people seem to hate History Pack 1. We'll circle back to that in a bit. But now it's in, you had it in the Bravo deck, and now it is in Sir Bolton. So do you think by this coming out that it's going to help maybe keep this price of the card within reason? Like it's still about $1 to $1.50 card, or do you think that because it's now going to be in the Bolton deck that this might make that card value from WTR go further down toward the like 50-cent range or $1 range, or what do you think is going to happen with that?
I think that all depends on whether or not, one, they introduce it in the other Armory decks, or people just start to get into Bolton. Because again, if you don't have any interest in Bolton themselves,
you're probably not buying.
You're not going to buy the Bolton deck, right? Because there is stuff in here that theoretically other classes can use. The chess piece that does come in the new Armory deck for Bolton is a light equipment, not a light warrior equipment.
Correct.
So it can be used in Prism or any other light hero that ends up coming out later on in the world. And it is, but it doesn't block. So like it's already bad. And then you have other concepts about it that make it not kind of fun, but it makes Art of War cost 1 or cost 0, which is kind of crazy. Something though that for Sync Below, I don't think it's going to change much because like you've shown, Sync Below has been in several Blitz decks and in several reprinted, HP1 and WTR. Also, the Unlimited product has like a ton of printings and there's tons of boxes.
I wanted to say shout out to Is it Rittenhouse or Rittenhouse? They have a total. They Righteous. Okay, they have over 1,000 between the two entries they have. But look at this: $3.95 and $5. So yep. I don't typically. This may or may not be the right way to assess card value, but I do not necessarily assess the card value on if somebody has 1 or 2 or 5. I typically click on the 4 or more, and that's how I kind of assume that's kind of the ballpark of price. Like you can get 65 of them from Yeti for $1.60. That's probably the reasonable price. But once all these are bought through, right, the next major plateau is Righteous Gaming at about $4, where they have 1,000 of them, right? It seems like a lot, yep. But when you have 3 in a deck, that only services what 1,000 divided by 3 is 300 and something players.
Mm-hmm. The other thing you also have to think about is that, like, if you really wanted to, you could look at Sync Below kind of like CNC, where all you need to do is get 3 for your first time round, and then you never have to. And you never have to
get it again. Correct.
So, and at that point, I don't think it's anything crazy. Is it a great card to get for literally every single format in Flesh and Blood?
Sure.
Absolutely. But is it going to go down in price because it's being reprinted in a Armory deck? If it didn't go down in price when it was in 2 Blitz decks, it certainly isn't going to go down in price when it's in an Armory deck that costs more than that.
100%. So now that this is the second of the decks, right? So we had
KO.
I don't even see that in here. Does he not have KO listed on the website?
It's probably just I don't know if it's specifically in there.
What's one of the cards that's unique in that KO deck? It's the chest piece. What's the name of that?
Savage Sash.
Yeah, what's the set code he uses?
ASK? No. AKO.
AKO. Here's a little bit of fun searching, around. There you go. So, AKO. I wonder if I should say set equals colon.
You can just do set colon. AKO.
So
There you
this
go.
would be that.
Yep. Yeah, Savage Sash, High Tanner, Strength Rules All, and Run Roughshod were the 4 new cards in that deck. Whereas Bolton got 4 new pieces of armor and a piece of equipment, and 4 new pieces of armor and a what do you call it? A D-React.
So take a look at this. This is kind of intriguing to me. I was looking at both KO and the Bolton decks and looking at just Majestics. Now, do you feel that there's an appropriate amount of Majestics in these? Or I'm not trying to say I don't like the decks, but I guess I'm curious about, like, when people are saying, you know, these are designed to be armory level, right? And if you look at that tier of where people say decks go between, like, World Champion all the way down to, you know, Commoner Blitz armory level stuff, these are armory level decks. So they're like first time, get in, play your game. You know, we're seeing that Bolton has a little bit more Majestics, but Luminant Ascension's a reprint. I don't think Saving Grace is a reprint. That's brand new. And then so are all of these 4 pieces of equipment. And then Raiden Dustbane is a reprint from Monarch. So there's 2 reprints in that one, but over in the you know, KO deck, other than KO being a hero that is technically a reprint, new, I think Savage Beatdown, that is not a reprint.
That's a reprint.
Oh, it is a reprint? What's that? Was that in Dynasty?
That's a reprint. I think not. Yes, actually, I think that was in Dynasty.
Was it?
It was in Dynasty, or it was
in
Dynasty. Yeah.
And then Strength Rules Them All is a brand new card. So there was 1 single reprint here. There's 2 reprints here, one being a weapon. What do you think? I mean, obviously the next logical thing is to play these 2 against each other, and I saw there was a dev minute on that.
I would say, first and foremost, if you haven't seen that video, I do suggest going to check it out, because it is great to see these 2 decks go into one another. I think that the level of M's inside the deck is not a problem. Personally, I don't think that having the, you know, if your deck requires a lot more Majestics than somebody else as far as like reprints go, then, you know, you need it, right? This was a lot of people were very on the fence with the KO Armory deck, because there are rare and majestic cards that cost next to nothing already that could have been reprinted as cards for the deck to make them more, you know, competitively viable, because these decks, for those of you who do not know, are kind of pretty decently based, at least the bulk of the deck is based on winning tournament decks like Pro Quests and RTNs and Pro Tours and all these things. Like they're based on these deck lists. Like I think the KO deck list is based off of the Pro Tour, one of the top 8 Pro Tour KO deck lists, where all like the rares and the commons and everything in the set are based off that. And there were some cards that were missed, right? Like Savage Feast was not a card that was put in there. People were upset that Bloodrush Bellows didn't get a reprint. Another Majestic that very well could have, you know, made the deck way more competitively viable. But something that a lot of people also don't know, or at least maybe they don't directly see it, is that they don't need to be a direct one-to-one reprint of a winning tournament deck. What they need to do is they need to have a theme, and they need to be able to utilize that theme and that strategy in order for the deck to function properly, and that's their whole goal. So for
it also unlocks like an upgrade path too. You can upgrade these for fairly cheap. I mean, you know, you'll have, obviously equipment is one of the most expensive items in Flesh and Blood, the game, because equipment is synonymous with the ability to be used, especially in generic, across multiple classes. And you know, even if, as an example, I took Michael Hamilton's world-winning, you know, Worlds deck, and I played that, I'm not going to be anywhere near as proficient or good at that deck as somebody that knows how to pilot that hero. So looking at the skill level involved with how to pilot, right? How to pilot a Bolton compared to a KO, I'm sure I could pilot a Kylo Ren. That's
Right.
that's an altar I haven't seen yet. That would be kind of interesting. Have him holding a lightsaber. Anyways, so if KO is the person I'm playing in like a head-to-head match, I'd do much better than if I was in Sir Bolton, because I just frankly don't understand the whole charging the soul, that world in Monarch never clicked with me, and that's one of the reasons I paused in Monarch and didn't really do very much, because the game got overly complicated and overly complicated to my simplistic mind of Unga Bunga Smash and steam counter with pistol go burr. So.
Right.
I'm sure if I spent enough time and had somebody who was proficient to educate me, I'd be much better at that. Which is why in a week or so, I think it comes out next Friday, the 12th. Right after that comes out, well, now that the deck list is available, I guess it can be done anytime. But I would like to sit down and do a Talishar game, playing both of these decks against each other, while also having a conversation of commentating back and forth about. I know the devs did that. I do want to watch that, but I feel like their level of expertise has a totally different vibe than like someone that's casual, where I'm more wanting to speak to the casual side of it versus like, hey, this one combo move gets you X amount of percentage better in the 10-run turn compared to like, this is the cooler, theoretical play of like you're, stabbing them with a mandible claw and jabbing them with the the hide tanner because there's a spike or whatever. I don't know, like however that would work.
Right. Yeah, I think from what I knew from the dev video that I watched, it's kind of funny because another way that they have to approach these from a design perspective is they have to approach them unlike they've ever done with their blitz decks. Because when you look at any of the blitz decks that have come out, they're supposed to be starter decks that get you into the game, but those blitz decks are really only supposed to go into the same decks that are in the same set. So if you get a deck for Outsiders, you should only be going against a blitz deck from Outsiders, as opposed to trying to go against a blitz deck from, Part the Mistveil. They're not meant to go into one another at such a level to the point where you're able to be like, yeah, my deck has an answer for everything. In these situations, for these armory decks, you have to have a deck that goes into nearly anything. And the way to kind of avoid doing that, because obviously we still don't have a sideboard or anything for that for this. So if with no sideboard, you have to just go really, really simplistic and basic, and that is take the hero, what do they do, and what cards do we have available to us to make them do that well, while still having at least 1 to maybe 2 power turns that can switch the tide of battle in favor of any hero. Because even during that video, the Calum who was on Bolton, straight up, like the beginning parts of the video, no beef to Calum, but the beginning parts of the video were just like, yeah, I'm gonna get steamrolled because KO just does so much damage, right? Like he's like, this is gonna be a lot, I don't know if I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna get his average beat down, it's gonna be rough, I don't think it's gonna happen. And they ended up pulling through and winning on Bolton.
Oh, nice.
And so this either could be simply because of poor variance, or like the use of cards in different scenarios, right? Like every person is different. I understand like playing from a dev mindset compared to playing from a pro player mindset who's thinking about every minuscule number, but it's all based on who's going to have it in your hand. And I think as long as the deck does what it's supposed to do, which is be able to be purchased for $40, and then you can go and sleeve it and play it in your armory,
sure,
and still get unique cards and also give you an intro into a class or a hero that maybe you've been curious about or you've been trying to do, that is the best way to go about doing it without going online and going, how can I build a budget deck for $50 and just buy all those singles online? Because you can do that too. But.
And a little shout out to, I think it's DM Armada. This is an idea that I was toying with in my head, but I wasn't going to do it for, I think he's doing it for CC. But, using TCG Player to, like, say your budget cap for a deck is X amount of dollars, and I think they're going to do a tournament or something based on on dollar amount. So like, you can build a CC deck with, like, I think you said like a $200 limit based on time of, playing, where they
Right.
check the deck, they deck check it against the value of TCG player, and if it's $200 or less, then it's valid. So that's kind of intriguing when you start looking at, like you said, value proposition to some of these cards. Because, face it, right now, as an example, there's only one KO. The second will be coming out on the 13th, which is Bolton. The third one will come out at Gen Con, which is Azalea. I'm going to own all three by that point. So when the fourth one comes out, is the fourth one going to be an Arcane, as an example, like a Wizard? Because if it is, then these are designed to play against each other. Well, where's my Arcane Barrier? And again, I'm not trying to say that you can't go out and purchase a sideboard to have Arcane Barrier. People would have that by that point, I'm sure. But just from a out-of-the-box standpoint, keeping these sleeved right in line, right, you're now giving a disadvantage to these decks that have no Arcane Barrier if you do have a CC like a Blaze Adult or a, Kano Adult or whatever other wizard, from these two new Rosetta sets that are coming out. So how do you think these are going to balance out long term? I know you mentioned balancing against, like, that was the problem. Maybe problem's the wrong word, but that was the unintended consequence of building these blitz decks in a set format where they were all together in one ecosystem. But when you go outside of that ecosystem and say play an Arcane Rising deck versus a WTR deck, well, depending on that matchup, it could be very, very one-sided. Even if you were the best of the best of the best, in the one hero. What do you see them doing to fix that later? I know in like Star Wars, as an example, they sell these packs for the old miniatures game called Legion. Well, I guess it's still around. They haven't discontinued it. FFG hasn't gotten rid of that game yet. But yeah, they got rid of X-Wing and they got rid of Armada. They haven't gotten rid of that one yet. But they sold these card packs. It was kind of like an upgrade pack, as an example. I'd be curious if maybe in the future they have a arcane pack that's like, buy this 15 card pack that's like the defense against the dark arts, or whatever, and it has like a suite of arcane barrier type things like your null runes and your other stuff like that. Like, is that a dumb idea? I mean, it's another product SKU.
I certainly don't think that they should make another product that is just arcane defense. I think that is a waste of their time and resources.
Armory pack, just everything's equipment.
I think at that point, if they're really worried about it, they should just be printing AB into every deck, right? Like, just like cut the middleman out, right? Just be like, hey, this AB is a way to damage your opponent, and we are not giving that to our players through these means. So here is a sideboard. We've decided to give a sideboard to the players for that. But I also think that at the end of the day, and this is going to sound very like, I don't know, uppity, elitist, but null rune equipment is dirt cheap.
Oh, sure.
And frankly, I would imagine, and this is just me, projecting, I would imagine that if you are looking to get into Flesh and Blood at any point, you have done a lot of research into the game. And if you have at least researched that arcane damage exists, and you might be finding it at your locals because X heroes exist in the format that do arcane damage, and if there are several content creators out there that may have made videos talking about that arcane damage exists and you can buy a whole suite of null rune equipment for like $5, then I'd imagine people are going to go, okay, I should probably buy this first, bring it while I get that. And if that doesn't even happen, right, let's just say your first time into an armory is you have no AB and you are playing in a locals that is wizard focused. They love wizard, right? It feels bad in that situation. But in most cases, the shop or even some other people who you're going against will normally just give you the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, just play this like it's null rune. Like, you can play these things like they're null rune. If some of them have null rune, like extra null rune equipment, they very well could just be like, hey, here you can borrow this for the day, because most people have like 1 to 2 decks on them, and if their opponent isn't doing arcane damage, then they don't need their own null rune, which they can then give to you to borrow for that exact reason, because everybody's got to put null rune in their deck for AB. So, not that I'm saying that that's obviously on the players and the LGS to make up for that loss, but I think it's just crazy accessible to get Arcane Barrier. It's a shame that players who are new to the game, who might not have all of these concepts in their mind to better their own deck. They have to go out and find it instead of them being like, okay, cool, you get this with your deck. But at the end of the day, it's easily accessible, and everybody's got some. I mean, I have like I don't know, like 10 sets of Nilrune equipment alone. So I think if it came to the point where it was worried about it, it'd be fine.
It's a very nitpicky piece of, ask, but I am curious, right, the long-term impact, especially if First Strike is no longer going to be Blitz. Blitz is separate. Like, let's say First Strike exists, Blitz exists, the Armory decks exist. At what point do we expect a player to just go out and purchase those items versus, say, have them available? Because, we are relying, as a holistic group, we are really relying on the community being stand-up, above-board members of the community to help another player. Unlike I've heard Cutthroat, friends talk about their experiences at the big M game, right? Like, they'll go to an event and it's just, oh, you don't have that card? Tough cookies. Go fly a kite. You're playing what you got. I'm going to stomp you because I want that thing. Bye. And I know that's not the way Flesh and Blood seems to be to me. Like, obviously, there'll be some of that. I'm sure it'll exist. Every community, as you get bigger, will have that, right? But for now, we are to the point where we can give that out. But if the community grows exponentially, if you have 1,000 influx of new people, I don't have 1,000 sets of Nilrune that I can just throw at somebody, so sooner or later they have to exist. And I'm 99.999% sure my guess is going to be they're going to exist in Rosetta because they haven't been reprinted in so long that,
Unless, of course, they print new common equipment that has Arcane Barrier.
Or you're talking like a generic one that's a different one?
Yeah. Like new generic that's just like, it's got AB, but it's like destroy this to get +1 to your next attack or something, but it's got AB.
Okay, so you're saying that, and that's a good clarification because I've not seen so far a single card in the Flesh and Blood ecosystem that I'm aware of that has been printed with the same ability but a different name. They're really good at reusing stuff. So if, as an example, they were release another generic equipment legs that had Arcane Barrier 1, that would essentially be called Nilrune Boots. So if they release something different that had the exact same ability, that would be a first. So you're saying that they might release something that's not Nilrune Boots, it's a generic that has another ability bolted on. So at that point, does that make Nilrune Boots literally useless? Because if
depends, right? It depends on if it's generic or if it's like maybe Runeblade specific, but I'd imagine it's generic, right? Because you also have to think about the fact that this is a draftable set, and you can't just not have. So either they reprint Nilrune, which could very well happen, right?
Okay.
Or they do 2 sets of draftable things, one that blocks physical damage, one that blocks arcane, and those are the ones that you get to choose from as your generic equipment as you open packs for those.
Where did this come from? I just found this on on Fabrary. Hold on. Where did this alternate? Where did that come from?
That's Pro Tour Amsterdam. They're giving those out.
I want.
Right.
I mean, that's
nice.
Beautiful.
That's you get the whole thing. It's got the whole Nilrune set.
Oh, it is. It's the whole thing.
Yep, the whole thing. So yeah.
Oh, that is cool. I have not seen this yet.
Yep. So that's all from Pro Tour Amsterdam. So if you get there, I think they have the.
Well, I'm not getting there.
It's essentially their like Sigil of Solace and their potions or whatever that you can get from these. It's just like going there and taking place in the events. You get that Nilrune equipment. So.
Damn it! Now how am I supposed to get these?
Well, you got to know somebody in Amsterdam.
Hey, if you're going to Amsterdam, I'll pay for a set that's not going to like financially ruin my life.
Right. Well, those I don't actually. I think they're only rainbow foil and they're not cold foil, so they might not hold as pretty a penny. But I don't know. I'm very curious to see where like the equipment goes because obviously like Arcane Barrier is going to be a necessity in that deck, or not in that deck in the overall scheme of Rosetta because you are dealing like Rune Chants straight up do arcane damage. Like there's no. It's either going to be Spell Void or it's going to be Arcane Barrier, right?
Okay.
So. It's not that it's a necessary thing that it's like going to be reprint Nilrunes directly, but I believe like this is a way for them to change these things out and go, hey, you know what? Like, we're gonna do some fun stuff.
Breaking news! Breaking news! I just discovered something that I don't think you even saw. Hold on,
Oh,
hold on. We have a rarity shift. It is a rare.
yeah,
What does that do for commoner?
nothing.
Are you sure? Like
I'm
it was
positive.
a common and now it's a rare. That doesn't
Yep.
change the fact that
Nope.
really.
Nope. As long as it was printed in common, it is a common card in commoner. That's just it.
Why would they
Another
shift
thing,
it to
fun
a
fact,
rare?
I don't know if you noticed, other cards in the Bolton deck also got a rarity downshift. Beaming Bravado was a rare.
That's
in
what I was
Dusk
gonna
Till Dawn,
say.
and it's now a common.
So does that
The
mean it can be
same-
used in commoner then?
Correct. Yes, that means that Beaming Bravado is now used in commoner. The same with oh god, there's another one that got a shift.
Take flight.
It's a yellow card.
Well, Banneret that's definitely a rare. I remember that being a rare.
Yeah. Valiant
Um,
Thrust. Valiant Thrust was a rare, and is now a common. So.
So in Monarch. Wow.
Yep.
So I could play a rainbow foil rare, Valiant Thrust in my commoner deck now.
Yep.
Interesting. Why okay, so let's talk about that. Why would LSS choose to up and downshift rarity levels? That doesn't seem something we've seen very much of, right? This is kind of the iceberg. This is the beginning of this style of thought, right? Like, as an example,
to be honest, we even saw rarity shifts in Part the Mistveil. We saw rarity shifts in several other sets. It's not. I don't think LSS is looking at commoner and being like they need more cards. The reason they would do something like that in a draftable set is strictly to be like, hey,
consistency or something.
You're right. This is, these cards need to show up more. For instance, Key Unleashed, which is the final combo thing for Zen, was a rare in Part the Mistveil because of how powerful it was in draft and sealed, but it is a common in Dynasty because you don't draft that, and it's just a card that you find. So Key Unleashed is able to be still used in commoner no matter what, as long as a card has been printed in common and is not as a part of a ban list or any of the restrictions, you are able to play it in commoner. So it is it is all based on that. And I think that a rarity shift in a product like
That did go from common to rare,
Bolton
correct?
deck, yeah. If a rarity shift for something in a pre-constructed deck, I'm not sure why they'd make that change, honestly. Because it just doesn't make any sense to me personally, because you don't have to hunt for these cards and they don't become more rare if their rarity is shifted from common to rare, because you still get 3 of them no matter what, and that's just it. So I'm not sure why, but it is neat to know that Bolton and Commoner now gets 2 new cards to utilize. Granted, it's not probably going to help so much, but they are cards that are able to be utilized, and Bolton players get to eat a little bit with this. And I don't know. I'm fine with I'm fine with rarity shifts, but I think it's one of those things where where you're probably never going to see a rarity shift from an M to a rare, ever. But you will probably see a rare turn to a common or a common turn to rare at some point, at any point. So
I mean that is definitely an interesting thought exercise, because I happened to look at the sync below and I saw a red at the bottom because I'm so used again flipping through cards, right? I'm used to when I'm sorting these bulk boxes, I got laser eyes for certain colors, and I would have never expected them to raise that, but maybe there's a other alternative option because sync below is more powerful and really it should have been a rare to begin with instead of a common. I don't know, maybe that's.
I mean, it's certainly a powerful card, and I think but to be fair, in the most popular format, that doesn't really matter to a lot of people, right? Because it's a rare, and it certainly doesn't. If it were to stay a rare and only be a rare, the only place it would ever be affected was commoner, and sure, using a D-react like that in commoner is really powerful.
Sure.
But I don't know. I think it's just weird that it happened in a pre-con. You know what I mean?
That is definitely a unique find.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, but again, they're able to change the rarities, and you're probably only going to see rarity shifts from rare to common, or then common to rare. But overall, I think if them printing Sink Below in the Bolton deck, the only thing it does is it shows me that they're not looking to do anything with Sink Below at any time soon, even though I know James White in one of his recent interviews was like, oh yeah, like I feel kind of bad because we essentially have to work around some of the more powerful cards that came out in the early days, like Command and Conquer and Sink Below, and cards that are just like insane value that are must-haves in your deck. And
I mean, couldn't they recon that to just restrict it to say you can only have one copy in a deck or something? I mean, they could do stuff like that.
They certainly could, but at that point, why even run it? I wouldn't even run one if it meant like I could just flip it to something else, technically, because you'd have to do the same thing for Fate Foreseen. Fate Foreseen is the same in a way, because you get to opt, right? And so it's I think it's a barrier they kind of got to skirt around, and they can skirt around it by making cards more powerful, so that blocking 4 isn't like as tempo changing compared to anything else. Because the one reason that blocking for 4 is such a big deal is because you block out a breakpoint at 4 for one card, whereas normally you would block out with a piece of armor and then a card from hand, or 2 cards from hand, or 2 pieces of armor, or however that might work. And now instead you can just go, cool, 1 card in my arsenal, I get to keep my whole hand, you don't get your on hit, I get to just do whatever I want to you now.
2 card hands are still 2 card hands.
Yep, that's it. So it's I don't know. I think there's use for it, and there's going to be use for it in Bolton too. I mean, like that new card, Saving Grace, is a defense reaction, which is very interesting. And I'm curious to see what uses we're going to see in that, if Bolton players are even going to run it. But the headpiece he got was really good, and obviously being able to use Raiden is great. I think it's just good. I think it's a good product, and I'm really, really happy. I want to go and get it when I get it. That way I have 2 starter decks that I get to play around with.
Oh, yeah.
And
well, we definitely have to schedule a time for me and you to do... I'd love to do it in person, personally, but obviously Talishar is going to be a lot easier. So we'll have to schedule a time for me and you to sit down and just jam a game or 2 with those.
Yeah, I'm down. It's kind of one of those things. I have them strictly for playing casually and just hanging out, and sometimes I'll bust it out in an armory and just be like, hey, you know what, I have this fully kitted out new deck, but I'm gonna play a $40 precon and see how I do into you guys. So
heck yeah,
it's a fun thing. Yeah.
Well, let me show you the next thing I got on my docket list here. I'm gonna zoom to my my little overhead. I'm gonna go a little micro head because I'm real tiny in the upper corner wherever I'm at.
There you go.
All right, so we saw this madness earlier, my little fab thing. So I pulled out the lore mat. I had that sitting around, but I wanted to showcase something cool. So again, something I don't think I've seen many people talk about. So what do we think is in this?
It's purple. Is it
purple?
Thematic to Rune Blades?
Sadly, no.
Dang.
Here, I'm gonna give you a little hint. How does this relate to what I might be showing in a second?
Wow, my freaking god. Geez, is it just going to be packs, or is it going to be like WTR singles?
So there's a reason that this, I guess, I mean, I've had this for a lot longer than I probably care to admit.
$175. You had to have had that for a while.
Or they're probably much more expensive nowadays. But
yeah,
this was the 4th set in Magic the Gathering's history, and I believe it was the first white border set.
No,
Unlimited it wasn't. Unlimited. Oh, that's true. Unlimited was. Okay, so this was second, because revised was... Gosh, man, I'm starting to lose my Magic knowledge. That sucks.
Dude, let me tell you, I've gotten rid of every single thing I've learned in high school, and it's just been replaced by cardboard knowledge, and I can't say I recommend that to anybody watching. I do not recommend.
Useless trivia night, on cardboard, you'd be like the person that's like, I got the scoreboard, buddy. I'm good. It's me.
It's in here. You guys just keep drinking. I'll take care of this.
So how would that might possibly relate to Flesh and Blood? What might be in this binder?
So, oh well, then I guess I'm assuming it's probably History Pack 1. Yeah.
This
There you
is
go.
this is an almost complete full set of History Pack 1. I'm missing a couple of cards, as you can probably see here.
Mm-hmm.
But something that, as everyone was chatting about all the whole, like, collectability, right? Honestly, white border just hits different. There's something interesting about seeing white border. And it really didn't make much sense to me until I actually looked at, like, a white border set in a binder. I was like, there's just something different about white border cards, and I don't think anybody really seems to respect that these exist. But
Yeah.
I feel like one day these are going to be like, man, do you remember when they made the white border versions of the reprints of those cards? Because you just don't see much of this stuff. Like, I don't see people at events playing with white border cards. It's like they're kind of like the redheaded stepchildren of the game. Like, nobody wants to say that they're here. But, like, I'd totally rock these in my dash deck if I could, right? Like, and I can.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd also be interesting, right, to have like one hyperdriver that's like a different color, so I'd remember like my mental step to myself, which would be, hey, that's my item that starts in play for dash. So like knowing that, hey, I'm going to make sure that that's my one that's in play. Granted, people may say they're maybe not, that's marking cards or whatever, but like, I don't think it is, but I'm sure
I don't think it is.
I'm sure there's some
Okay.
people that would have different opinions, but
Yeah.
here's your Rune Blade section, right?
I think the white borders look fine. I mean, I literally am building, the only Kano I ever own is the white border Kano. And I think that, sure, some people have their favorites of black border over white border. Some people prefer one or the other, but I feel like white border pops really well in a lot of sleeves. And
That's
honestly, like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, I have white border cards and black border cards mixed together in multiple decks of mine, and I'm just like, hey, listen, this is what I had on hand. If I want to play this game, I use the cards and then utilize the tools I have in front of me. And if I really was like, I need to have these in all the same color border, then I just get them. But white border is so inexpensive, and it's still such a there's only one set that's been printed in white border. There's only one set, and that set is also out of print as of right now. So they didn't do anything with History Pack 2. History Pack 2 does not have a white border.
Well, I can't even figure out where to get History Pack 2. I have been trying to figure out how to purchase a box so I can open it, but like I think
you
it's
have to like contact people from Germany or Spain or something.
Yeah, I'd love to, because I don't even think it's in English. I think it's only in.
Yeah, it's only in the other languages, not Japanese though. But yep, it's a hard find for sure, and I think that it is going to be, it's just going to be one of those things where it was a set that was made to help new players allocate into the game. It came with more. The boxes came with more packs than normal, and that's really, really good. Because you had chances at better things and a wider variety of stuff, but the boxes also cost significantly more. So I shouldn't say significantly, it was like $10-$20 or something more. But I think the set works, and I think if you're brand new to the game, picking up a pack of History Pack 1 or picking up a box of History Pack 1 is a great way to start it off, honestly.
Well, which pack do you want to open? Because this is going to be kind of an episodic tradition at this point. I have 3 to choose from. We have a History Pack, a Welcome to Wraith, and an Outsiders.
Right.
Which one would you like to see?
Well, so like I'm always a sucker. I think you're gonna get more variety of the different things that are in the game for History Pack 1. But Welcome to Wraith has a lot of really great things, and it's at least like core value of Flesh and Blood. Outsiders is a lot more based into like kind of the newer version with a lot of tokens and so on and so forth. I personally would just say open up HP1 because it's got a ton of stuff in there. All the super rares got bumped up to Majestic. You've got Command. All 3 of the cards that everybody complains about are too expensive in Flesh and Blood are in this set, in this pack, right there. You can go ahead and buy. And yeah, the pull rates are probably not as great as one would think, but they are there and they're in white border, so you don't have to worry about foiling. You don't have to worry about curling or any of that. You just get it. So
no curls. Ooh, I keep forgetting these are only 10 card packs too.
Yep.
And I think the last 2 cards in the pack are going to be. Oh, there you go. There's a Fate for Seeing.
Red Fate for Seeing.
Ka-chow. And then there's a Vestige. All right, so it's I think it's the next card is the last card in the pack. We got 1, 2, 3,
yeah, 1 rare
4,
and then
5.
Majestic or a rare.
Crane Dance.
Crane
2
Dance.
rares. But
Oh.
that's still a cool pack. Like it gives you a variety of. I mean, look at this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 different classes worth of cards, and then
Right.
2 generics, and then there was 1, and the rare duplicated between, you know. But that's kind of the reason I think they also had to go away from like supplemental sets is because you can't. I mean, there's not a way for us to really have every class in a set anymore. And I kind of started realizing that once you hit Dynasty, right? Is it's like you have so many classes that you couldn't feasibly put 1 slot for each class as you kept going in the boxes. So
Yeah, I think that's the thing though, right? Is that you have a lot of variety when it comes down to something like HP1, and that gives you an idea of what's in the game. But I'm always one to say that me personally, if I'm going to start anything, especially something like a TCG, just do a ton of research into stuff. And I believe
most people don't do that though.
Which is insane to me. It's insane to me because
I'm gonna go buy a car at the car lot, and I'm just gonna roll a here. Let's roll a dice. Ready on a
Right.
on a. I rolled a 9. I want the 1, 2, 3, 4. I want that car, the 9th car.
Right. Like it doesn't make any sense at all to do something like that. And so like even when you look at it now, you look at a box of, and I kid you not, right? Look at a box of History Pack Volume 1 right now, white border.
$90.
$90. That is,
I know that because I'm
is like-
staring at it on here.
that is nearly map pricing for this box. And
yes.
it used to cost, well, actually, no, I guess it's technically less because the MSRP is 140. So if you take 20% off 140, it's less than that, and it's tanked significantly. But every card, if everybody who is playing Flesh and Blood right now spent $90 to go buy a box of History Pack Volume 1, there would be more Command & Conquers on the market, there'd be more Legendaries on the market, there'd be more Art of Wars, and the prices would drop significantly.
Little known fact though, if you look at the prices right quickly, 90 turns into 100, turns into 110, and then at the very end here, right, this is where you get the intriguing, right? You have the Spanish black border. This is $200 a box. Then you have the Italian, I think, or this is French, which is $200 a box. But I don't see the German is not on here. I don't see anybody selling the German. I don't see anybody selling the Italian. And if you go back to the Flesh and Blood, so apparently when you go to this, it takes you out of the Fab TCG webpage. So do you know about the Collector Center, right?
Yep.
So for those that may not know, there is a section on Flesh and Blood that is called the Collector Center. And one intriguing thing that was very kind of unknown until they released the numbers, right? The quantity of displays. Look, there was only 6,000 total displays for Italian, and there were 13,000 of each of the Spanish, French, and German. So, like, getting a full set of those cards is actually pretty stupid hard. Like,
yep.
You know, and they haven't released the white border version, but I could only imagine that's going to be fairly sizable. I would think.
Yeah, I think something that's really, really interesting, and it's actually how I got my, big 3 cards of my Art of Wars, my E-Strikes, and my CNCs, is instead of buying them on the American secondary market, I actually bought all of them in German from a store in Germany. They got it shipped over to me, and I got all of it for like, I think $275, which is absurd because 3 CNCs alone is like $210, $220 here if you're getting them like, white bordered, or if you're going to get them something else. But now I have 3 German CNC, 3 German Art of War, and 3 German E-Strike and those are short printed, essentially, because if 13,000 boxes of HP1 in black border were printed in German, like you have near collector pieces. That's why the black label booster boxes, regardless of them being in a different language, they are still short printed versions of those cards, and they're not going to be reprinted in those unless, of course, the cards itself gets reprinted in a different set in that language already.
I will reveal one fun little piece of thing I have squirreled away is I did manage to, I think it might have been Cards with Michael, so thank you. This was right when this kind of happened back in the day. I think he had some of these, and I did purchase one of each, and I have squirreled them away to keep for 10 plus years from now. Like, yeah. I will definitely at some point open these boxes. 100%, it'll be exciting. But, you know, I want them to marinate for a long time so that the excitement factor of knowing that these are the first couple of sets, right? Because these really encompass the first two sets. It's like a WTR box. It's like an Arcane Rising box. It's like, I think, Crucible, or do they have some Crucible cards now?
Crucible in there too.
So it encompasses that world. But then, you know, History Pack 2 here, this encompasses the Tales of Aria, the Everfest, the Monarch section, because you have, there's the, you know, 1, 2, 3 Fableds, right?
Yep.
But because they're only another one, I would love to even have one of each of these four, but I have literally never even seen, one, I haven't seen anybody open it online, and two, I haven't even seen the physical boxes. Now it says it was printed on October 22, but these had to have been a stupid small printing for these to exist. Like, well, yeah, I think it's also a lot of people are already buying the English versions of them, and this is just another way to be like, hey, we want this to get to the people who, you know, to localize their languages and so on and so forth. But I know a lot of people had issues with History Pack 1 because the translation of the languages was not as direct. It wasn't as accurate. Sure. And that caused issues. And that's strictly because they decided to take on like 4 additional languages on top of English, or 5 additional languages on top of English, just right out the bat. So it was a lot for them to do on their end as translated, because they were a small company when HP1 came out. So they kind of just like gave themselves too much work, and it ended up being a little bit of a problem there. But HP2, they were just like, well, Monarch and Tales and all that stuff, a lot of it was just like up and coming people were playing. But History Pack 2 was just to continue into History Pack 1. But there was Tales that History Pack 2 was going to also get a white border version of it, and it was going to come to the US, but we've never seen it, and we're probably not going to see it, because now that everybody in the United States marketplace, or really the English marketplace, see that the print runs for the unlimited versions of these products are really, really high, they're sitting on shelves in most cases. And sure. that is causing it to be like, well, why would they print HP2 in white border if there's regular product available anyway? Sure. Right. Well, and like, I mean, if you just saw me going through that as you were talking, Part the Mistveil is technically, we don't know if it's in or out of print. Heavy Hitters here, we don't know if it's in or out of print. But like Bright Lights, according to this is out of print. So basically, everything is already out of print, minus the possibility of Part the Mistveil and Heavy Hitters. So, and all these older ones here are out of print. Yep. I don't know if that means going forward, right? There's obviously no shortage of some of these boxes theoretically on the marketplace, but when I look at things, here's Fabry, right? Here's the set. So when you sort by the number of cards, right? History Pack 2 dwarfs every set because it's just a massive compilation of cards. History Pack 1, by the way, the reason it took me so long to get these damn things together, and by the way, it doesn't even fit in one binder. It's over 360 cards. So like these BCW like Z Folio folders hold 360. So I had to use, this is the second binder here. This is the Crucible of War first, or like not my first ed. This is just unlimited set here. But like I use the first part for Crucible of War, and at the very end, when I'm done with the Crucible of War, where I see my foil crack bobble, I go to the next page and I have the white border starting up with all the generics, because that's what takes up, and it damn near finishes out the whole binder, because these sets are massive. Like Monarch, as an example, I have another Z Folio binder behind me with Monarch in it, which is the first edition. I think I'm going to give up on trying to go for the full first edition for Monarch, because I'm not going to go after all the cold foils. I just can't afford that. So I'm gonna circle back to doing the unlimited version. But I got like 80% of the way done through Monarch, like most of the rares, commons, most of the Majestics. But then when I started looking at the cold foils, like technically speaking, actually, so circle back on History Pack 1, for me to finish out History Pack 1 is $500. $500 for me to buy like 12 cards, Tunic, CNC, E-Strike, the other legendaries that I don't have. It's basically $500 for those. I could not believe it when I looked at that and I put them in a cart. I said, "You got to be shitting me that it's $500 for white border versions of these cards," which again is impressive in its own right, because look how many times now Teklo Heart's been reprinted a couple times. Almost all of these, legendaries from the first couple of sets have been put into supplementary sets. Tunic again has been reprinted multiple times now. So it's just intriguing when you start looking at the set sizes. Rosetta is going to fall right in line with heavy hitters and bright lights from a set size perspective. Part the Mistveil is a little bit tinier, is the same size as Outsiders, same as Tales of Aria, really. Dust Till Dawn and Uprising were again on the smaller side, but then you think about like Arcane Rising, Crucible of War, and even Welcome to Wraith. They're all they were just a smaller, like under 300 cards, under 250 cards. Yep. So when you start looking at these set sizes, to see that Rosetta is kind of on the top end of, back to like Monarch size of set, throwing in the amount of random extra treatments of maybe extended arts and cold foils and alternate arts and alternate variations of things, this is going to be a collector's nightmare. Like, it's going to be a fun nightmare, but it's going to be like Master Set Madness is going to have an aneurysm trying to get everything for the set, because like it's just, there's so much there to probably get. Which isn't a bad thing, right? But at the same time, you got to know what you're getting into, I started looking through all my sets from the release dates of like, okay, I've checked Welcome to Wraith. I'm like 95% done with Welcome to Wraith. I'm like 95% done with Arcane Rising, Crucible of War, Monarch. And then I started looking, I'm like, I haven't even built a binder for Tales of Aria. That's why I have all my Majestics on the side over here. Once I get that squared away, I'm going to say, great, I have what I need. And then hopefully give up on first edition and just do the unlimited, because I think in our other episode at one point, right, we talked about the affordability of cold foils,
right,
and I will just go ahead and say that cold foils are affordable for people that really want to begin to evaluate the accessibility of cold foils, because I went ham and started buying. I mean, there's about 100 here. This is about $100. That's all that was, give or take. Maybe 150 with some extra like shipping. I bought a couple of higher tier ones that I needed to complete a selection. But people can, you can really expand your collection and have feels good for your playing. Like, I'm working on a Teklevossen deck. This is what sparked me to do a lot of this. This is a lot of Evo, cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be building a Teklevossen deck with some of these mixed in there. And, as I've kept my cart full of other things I wanted to buy, there are people buying out certain cards right now that, I know that there's people probably not buying them all at once, but it's really weird to see 17 or 20 of a card disappear day to day. And it's like, there's something somebody must be banking on, or they deem that card too cheap for it at the price, right? Because, I mean, face it, cold foils at $1 or $2. I mean, that's great, but sooner or later, especially as these boxes go out of print, some of them are going to have to, somehow go up in value. But not every card will, right? Like, that's not every card in Magic is valuable. Not every card in Pokemon's valuable. There are some really exotic promos I've seen over the years that are just pennies on the dollar. I love the artwork, but for some reason or another, they're not desirable to some player or certain subset collectors. So.
Yep, it's kind of all based on what you have. I know a lot of, when it comes down to like collecting strictly, a lot of the times if you have insider information in regards to like how much of a certain card was printed in a set, that certainly helps determine whether or not that asset would be quote unquote worth it to somebody. But even still, when you think about it, right, a buyout's a buyout, and buyouts exist, and they exist anywhere. It's not normally the case in Fab, because nobody is, I don't think there are too many people who are going, all right, there are 200 cold foil, I'm trying to think of Waves of Aquamarine, which is
Okay.
a common arm piece, and they're like, there's 200 of these on the market. I'm gonna buy 150 of them, and it's gonna spike the price. But like, you got to remember that if you're buying a TCG player, it's just like we had said earlier, it's gonna start at like 10 cents, 20 cents, and then eventually you have people who have put their floor at like $2, $5, $10 for these. And I hate to break it to you, you should never spend $10 on a Waves of Aquamarine cold foil. I don't care how much you like the art, it's not worth $10. And it might be worth $10 if
I mean, if it was a Magikarp, on the card, I would totally do that because I love Magikarp.
Right, like if you have like a deep, like a necessity for it, and it was the cheapest one available on the open market, by all means, right? But I think unless you find out for some reason that this card was short printed and the set was short printed, and we know that from Flesh and Blood's reprint policy that cold foils are not going to be reprinted in future sets, and that this is the only set in which you are going to get these cards in cold foil, and once it's out of print, it's out of print. Sure. If those print numbers are low, then collectors in the future will have to look back on these sets and go, oh man, well, I really wanted this Waves of Aquamarine, but some jackass bought 150 of them and speculated, and now that we know that the print run of Part the Mistveil was like 80,000 boxes or something, it's like, well, crazy stuff, right? Now these Waves of Aquamarine are going to go up to like, $50 a freaking card. But that's huge left field speculating about this kind of stuff. And
why would the Armory decks not have some sort of bling? The Doryverse Rhinar decks had some cold foils in them. I mean, from my understanding, when I looked at the list, it does not sound like the Bolton deck will have cold foils. They'll just have rainbow foils.
Yep.
So
yeah, I mean, the Armory deck also, the KO Armory deck also only had rainbow foils.
Any reason you think somebody might have chose that route versus picking a cold foil, similar to how they did it with Doryverse Rhinar?
I think possibly the reason being is that they didn't want to, if they ever wanted to add them into things like judge packs, they don't have to worry about ruining that reprint thing. Now, granted, I mean, the cards that got, they're also unique to this product, which is a different thing, right? Like, now we know that it will never be printed in rainbow foil anywhere else, and it could be printed in non-foil anywhere that it needs to be, like Savage Sash, right? Savage Sash, the only printing it has left to have is cold foil, because it's a cold foil and non-foil, right? And so they can reprint non-foils no matter what. But
so that applies still to the rainbow foil? I thought that was only a cold foil promise.
No, I mean, as far as I can tell, right? Because every time, if you've seen a reprint of a card that has come out in a previous set, if it had a rainbow foil version of itself, it does not have one in the master set. So, for instance, Scar for Scar from Uprising.
Yep.
Scar for Scar, obviously being WTR, there's no rainbow foil Scar for Scar in Uprising. And the same goes for the equipment, right? They just reprinted Findell's Spring Tunic and Tekla Foundry Heart in Bright Lights, and both of them are non-foil. There's not an option for rainbow or cold for either of those, because it's just non-foil. So if a card is going to be reprinted, it is more than likely going to be non-foil, unless for some reason they deem it to be a card that is like, a big hyped thing for a set and very thematic to this set, and they will make it an extended art, cold foil situation kind of deal. But for the most part, if it's going to be in rainbow foil, they're probably, since it only comes in rainbow foil in that Armory deck, you're probably not going to see it in rainbow foil in any set. If anything, you're going to see it non-foil if for some reason, right? But I don't expect that to ever. I don't think Savage Sash or any of these like equipment pieces are ever going to get like a serious reprint unless it ends up breaking a meta. And even then, if it ends up breaking a meta, it's got to break a class.
Yeah, I think they would probably ban it before they would, or restrict it before they would reprint it.
Yeah, because it would restricting a legendary, or not a legendary, restricting a piece of equipment doesn't do anything, right? But if you're looking towards something like, okay, like, Savage Sash is just a new chess piece for every brute, and every brute now wins every event ever because of Savage Sash, at that point they either go, okay, we're going to ban Savage Sash, that was a mistake on us, or they're going to go, if everybody wants to play Savage Sash, that's fine. Eventually all the brutes are going to hit Living Legend, and then it's not going to matter. And so then it'll just be a card that sits, and maybe they'll eventually reprint it as non-foil somewhere in the future, if you go to the Savage Lands, for instance.
Interesting thought. So,
Yep.
I mean, I guess at this stage, anything you'd like to maybe bring to the docket or talk about, since we've bounced around a little bit from some lore, a little bit of the Bolton stuff that's in there, some like Blast of the Past with History Pack, a little bit of collection stuff. Any other random topic you'd want to discuss on number 4 here?
I don't know. I mean, like, really, honestly, I think a lot of it is like, you know, when it comes down to collecting or even just like trying to speculate, I'm not for one, not a financial advisor, so I can't tell you what to do with your money. Obviously, don't put it into cardboard. That is my actual advice from me to you. Is if you are not in a position in which you can, you have bills to pay and you're in debt and all these things, don't just go out there trying to collect a whole bunch of cardboard, because it's not healthy. But what I will say is that there are plenty of deals you can find out there in regards to collecting and even just playing, right? History Pack Volume 1 is a great concept for that, for playing the game, because they are the cheapest versions of the cards, because they're non-foil and only non-foil, and because they're non-foil and also somewhat different, everybody decides that it's just junk for them, so they'll sell it for cheaper online. But what I know that really drives a lot of the costs of things as far as the game goes is not enough people are opening up product, and I think it's just because you have your few backpack sellers that sell that stuff, and then you also have the core LGSs that sell a lot of Flesh and Blood, but there's not enough people opening up Flesh and Blood, and because there's not enough people opening up Flesh and Blood and then attempting to flip it, it doesn't really work out in that manner. But I don't know, I'm very hopeful towards the future of Flesh and Blood. I believe that the Flesh and Blood world is growing day by day, whether it be through casual players or competitive players, whatever it may be. But I know that the more you play, obviously just go to your LGS, pick up one of these armory decks, and play the game and see if you like it. And for $40 to check to see if you like it, it's pretty rad. But if you don't end up liking it, and there's something that you just feel missing, or maybe you just wanted to try other TCGs, it's totally fine. Just know that there are beginner options for people, and that playing the game is not all about the dollar amount that you get at the end of the day. It's just about enjoying your time and trying out something new. So, yeah, that's it.
Excellent. And for those of you that are watching this online visually, I will apologize that apparently I might have had a box up on top of my face, right-clicked, that says something about read. I'm going to have to see if it's in the actual video, but nice little fun lesson for myself next time is to check all the little video pieces. And, I mean, in my opinion, audio is more important, because I think most people are just going to want to listen to this than watch my mean mug. So, but good one. So, all right.
There you go.
Well, I think if nothing else, I feel like that kind of is going to bookend and wrap up our fantastic episode number 4 here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited to see kind of what's going. It has been a light week as far as media releases for Flesh and Blood, and I'm sure the moment I say that, out of nowhere, you're going to get ka-chow, just stuff's going to come out, and it's just going to be insane. So
Pro Tour Amsterdam is probably our next biggest huge reveal for the Flesh and Blood world, which I believe is at the end of this month. So that's when we are going to see what the Wizards do. We're going to see for Rosetta. We're going to see probably tons more spoilers for that. So that's going to be a very, very interesting.
Buy your cards now.
Episode.
Don't wait for the buyouts.
Yeah, definitely. Just if you have been speculating and being like, "Oh, this card might get lower," so on and so forth, and you really are dedicated to playing this class, right? Whatever class it might be, I suggest you pick them up as soon as possible. And there's a lot of hype, right? If you genuinely know you can't afford it, or you don't want to get into the game because the cards are currently hyped for certain classes, understandable. But at least for Wizards right now, people just don't know. enough. They just know that a wizard is happening, and because they know a wizard is happening, some wizard cards are going up in price, but some wizard cards are going down because they're just assuming it's all speculation. But obviously, take it with a grain of salt. Don't overspend on things that you don't need to. You can always play budget versions of these decks for like $30, no matter where you go, whether or not there's an armory deck for it or not. And then if you choose that you like that class or you like that hero, you can upgrade upon that as you go throughout your Flesh and Blood journey. But don't just drop $800 on cards and only to find out that $600 of those cards don't matter, and then you have to reset everything, and you got to buy all this stuff from Rosetta and spend another $600. It's a whole thing.
I'm going to give my very first and probably only suggestion of card purchase that I think I've ever publicly done on YouTube. Arc Knight Skullcap, because it's generic. I know you've already missed the low, like it's come up since it's a generic, but it does have Arcane Barrier. Even if it's not completely usable, at some point, they've chose to put this into the Japanese print of this product, meaning that somebody deems it important enough that because Arcane Rising is out of print, that they want this to exist. And whether they're not putting it in some sort of deck, as an example, they're not putting it in a pre-constructed, it sounds like, I would still have one around, whether you get the, what they call Dole Cap, which is the, Everfest version, or you get the Arcane Rising version. It looks like the cheapest version is $20 for the Everfest version, which even prior to the dip, that thing was down to $10 or $15. So it still hasn't really bounced too high up. And I only say get that because it's a generic. It works for every class, and having one of them means that for as long as you're playing Flesh and Blood, you have that as an option in your armory, and go from there, which... actually, Alex, that's one thing I'm going to start working on. I'm going to get a binder together, and I want to have, I don't know if there's a way to get on Fabry, is there a way to tell me how many total pieces of equipment exist? T:(EQUIP equipment?
You just do T:(equipment and then C:(generic.
Well, is there a way for me to eliminate duplicates, or will they only if Achilles Accelerator's in here multiple times, will it only show one version of the card?
Yes.
So as of right now, there are two. It says 299. So there are 300 pieces of equipment in the game. I want to have a binder that is nothing but equipment. Like, I just want to have one of every, even if it's I don't care if it's the rarest, the whatever. I just want a copy, and see if I am close to that full 300. And then with the next set, there'll be more released, right? So. Yep. One 360 count, BCW binder here should be able to have a dang near comprehensive. And as I look through this, right, I see a couple of oddities like Proclamation of Combat, Proclamation of Production, Proclamation of Requisition. I don't have those kind of cards. I have one of them. But as I look through here, just as a casual player, for the most part, I have a majority of what has been in here for multiple sets. Technically, Teklovossen counts as a piece of equipment, I guess, because he's double-sided. That's kind of interesting. So, yeah, I want to try to see if I can manage to make this happen, because that would just be such a unique thing. Is like, oh, here, by class, let's look at all the stuff we can get. Oh, Nitromechanoid counts, too. That's cute. Love it.
Yeah, oddly enough, Nitromechanoid is an equipment, but you also have all the equipment that is the Evo stuff, right? And so Evos, while they aren't like equipable pieces at the beginning of your game, they are equipment pieces that are in a deck. So if you're looking for strictly arena-based equipment that starts on your field, then you'd probably have to do some advanced searching in that regard. But there's a lot of equipment available, and most equipment has a budget version of itself. So
I might have to see what I can slap together before the next video, because there's a couple that look beautiful. Like the Nom de Plume is a good example. I see that there's the TCC version, but then there's also looks like a LSS version of like a promo copy. So I feel like maybe I could start doing this where I'm slapping the lowest version on the bottom, and then if I can get a better one, I slot it on top or whatever. So that'd be kind of a cute little game in the long run.
Yeah, that'll be fun. But there's a lot available. I think if You know, if you're looking for generic pieces because you're not sure what class you want to stick to, there's a lot of generic equipment all available. Even if your starting equipment is just a full suite of iron rot, it is, you know, it is what it is, right? It gets you where you need to be. But that's also why I'm happy these armory decks include great armor.
Apparently,
So-
only about 71 generic total cards, with a couple in here looking like they're promo duplicates of more staple name stake cards.
Sounds about right.
So, but that's awesome, right? Like, I like that
Yeah.
there's generics. I love that there's variety. You know, this is cool.
There's always a lot where having a bunch of this generic good stuff be in the decks, it allows you to have something. And that's the other thing, is with more of these draftable sets that come out. Obviously, Mystic was more strictly about like the Mystic thing because it was the same talent that everybody shared. But in Runeblade and all these with Rosetta, you're probably going to see more generic pieces, kind of like heavy hitters, because there's more of an option for change in their stuff. The draft formats and the limited formats really change what the common and rare generic equipment looks like, and I feel like that's just something to look out for, because like you didn't see a whole lot of it in Bright Lights because everybody was Mechanologist. You didn't see a lot of it in Mistveil because everybody was Mystic. But when you have multiple classes and multiple talents, you're going to get generic stuff that is going to also be able to change, which is, again, why I am on the record assuming that they're going to be creating new Arcane Barrier, or it's either a new Arcane Barrier or new Spell Void in the Rosetta set. And that's my hot take.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out and tuning in with us. So we'll catch you on the next one. So until next time, may your games be fun and your friendships grow. Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I totally noticed that somewhere along the line, I don't know if it's the whole video, I must have right-clicked on something over on the other computer, and I think I had a box in front of most of my face, because I looked over and I was like, why is it like I'm trying to dodge something in the window?
That's funny.
Now I'm gonna see if that.
Yeah, check the footage.